Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our Momentum Monday call. We do this every Monday at 8:30. And today we have a very special guest. Oh my goodness, sorry. I want to welcome Dr. Brett Klesko. He is a national marketing director with the Juice Plus company, and he has two beautiful children. He is a chiropractor, and he's got a really amazing story. And I really wanted to get him on to share his powerful story with you because stories really do make a difference in this business. I know when I first started, I didn't really have much of a story, but I was sharing other people's stories with everyone. With my dad, it really helped with his arthritis. When it would come up in a conversation, I'd talk about how much it helped with my dad's arthritis, or how it helped with my friend Leah's diabetes, or it just went on. Just stories are so powerful. This product is powerful. And so I invited Brett to come on here and share his story with us. And Brett, thank you so much for doing this. I am just going to unmute and let you take over. Thank you again.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be invited. I love these things. I love the sharing of stories, and it's been such a crazy few years, like I was mentioning earlier to Barb, that it's nice to see everybody's faces, because I think we all got so used to just either hiding behind a mask or just hiding. And so this is really nice. It's a great way to start my week on a Monday night. The kids are down, and hopefully they stay that way. We'll see. So if somebody comes barging in, that's how it goes, right? But I always said that when I stepped into this business, which was definitely not on purpose, that a lot of things just kind of line up your way, and sometimes you just converge in a different path than you thought you were going. But I always said that the reason why I share my story is because if it helps just one other person get better, then it was entirely worth the energy. I also found out that upon sharing, you never realize how many people either can relate to your story or can take bits and pieces of it and or are very much like almost in the same place that you are. So I think it's really powerful that we share our struggles and our successes and our wins, because you never know who you're going to be able to touch or help with it. And I know as a chiropractor, I almost help more people doing this than I do being a chiropractor, because I only get to see one person at a time and I get to see everybody else. So I'll dig into my story a little bit. 2003, I was involved in a major car accident, and basically as a pedestrian, I got hit and I suffered 2 skull fractures, a severely broken left ankle, and I had road rash over about half of my body. I launched my shoes about 400 feet apart. I turned my jeans into short shorts, and it wasn't good. I was immediately rushed to the hospital. They didn't know what was going to go on with me. They actually thought I just had broken my ankle because it was flopping everywhere. But then they started noticing that I started losing hair, and I started bleeding out of my eyes, and I started getting these really bad neurological symptoms. So they sent me in for a CT, and they noticed that I had fractured up my skull in the back and then around the side. And immediately they went, uh-oh, we're in a bit of trouble. So they transferred me to the Royal Alex here in Edmonton, and I was put on neurosurgery prep, expecting not to make it through the night. Things got really bad. I became tonic. For anybody that's seen brain injuries, you basically become very stiff. I lost sight in my right eye, hearing in my right ear, and it was really sketchy for a long time. But I survived the nights. They wouldn't let me sleep more than 20 minutes, which was absolute agony and torture. And I had this beautiful nurse that was so gentle with me, but I was able to make it. And after they realized that I wasn't going to die of my brain injury, they went, okay, we got to fix his ankle. So they fixed my ankle. I went in for surgery, and they screwed it together and hope for the best. Type of ankle fracture I had has an 80% chance of dying. And so they went, well, I don't know, have fun. And they sent me on my way. They told me initially when I got my assessment for the neurosurgeon and some of the psychologists there that with my level of brain injury, which was diagnosed as a moderate brain injury, that the chances of me having a job, going to school, having a relationship, really functioning in society would be very questionable. They didn't think I was going to be able to do any of those things. And then they told me I probably wouldn't walk ever again. So they sent me home with that. That was my nice little going away basket from the hospital. And so I went home, and I sat there and asked basically, what do I do? And in my head, what I was told is you either wait and heal or you don't heal. That was it. So we sat there. 3 weeks went by, and my headaches finally went away. I lost about 80 pounds, and was extremely underweight. But my headaches finally went away, and I was able to come out of my room. And I went in back to the hospital. They checked my head a little bit, didn't say much, didn't really look at my head at all, and then went after my ankle. And they found at 3 weeks that basically no healing had happened. So they sent me home, being like, "You're still casted, you're still non-weight bearing. 3 weeks come back." So 3 weeks comes back. I'm still doing nothing because that's what I'm told I should do. And at 6 weeks, there's been no healing. And they went, "Okay, well, still non-weight bearing. We'll take your cast off, but you cannot stand on it. Another 6 weeks, come back and see us." And we asked at this time, right to them, "What can we do?" And they said nothing. So I went home with that mindset of nothing. And I held that for another 6 weeks. So now it's 12 weeks go by. I go back in and I have something called the snow cap sign on my talus, on my left ankle. And that's a sign of necrosis. The bone was starting to die. So I'd done so much damage to it that now it was resorbing back into my body, and I would never be able to hold weight onto it. It would crumble underneath me. So they went, "Okay, it looks like it's dying. What we're going to do is give you another 6 weeks. Then we have to do a surgery to fuse your ankle." That means no movement, no anything, a whole bunch of metal, and that's it. So at 17 years old, I was basically told I would never be able to walk normally, never be able to run again, return back to sports, do anything that I love to do. And so that's a heavy pill to swallow. And I think my dad was with me at that time. He saw that the gravity of the situation finally had come down on me. And that's when we panicked. I didn't know anything, 17. Think I know everything. Really just an idiot, but that's kind of where I was. So I relied on my dad, and my dad, as a chiropractor, reached out to everybody. He reached out to everybody he could. He looked into exercises. He looked into contrast bathing. He looked into electrical modalities, magnetic modalities. He literally looked at every single thing. And we had these two friends with us at the time called Mark and Yvonne. And at this time, this was a long time ago, but we had never really heard about it. They offered this thing called Juice Plus, and it's just fruits and vegetables. It has these little red and green capsules, and that's it. And my dad, being a chiropractor, knowing enough about nutrition and sports, went, "Well, it's just fruits and vegetables. It can't possibly hurt." So put me on a double dose of that. Now, being 17 and probably not having the best nutrition, double dose of it put me through some pretty heavy heartburn and gallbladder attacks for about a few weeks. But then I came out of it. The other thing we decided to do was a little bit of exercise, just moving on a bike, and a little bit of contrast baths to try to just increase the blood supply to it, to push the nutrients into it. And so 6 weeks go by, we go back in, and we're fearing the worst. This is it. This is make or break for this ankle. And the guys x-rayed it. That time it's not digital, so they're holding it up to like the light box, and then they're looking at the hot light or the hot lamp, and then they're talking back and forth, and they disappear, then they come back, and we're sitting there like, holy hell, like how long is this going to be? And eventually they come back, and then the doctor, I remember this, my surgeon basically looks at us and goes, "It's healed." And we're like, "Wait, what?" Like, not partially, he said completely healed. And he asked what we did, and my mom was sitting there like, "Fruits and vegetables." And I remember him being like, "No, that can't possibly be it." And then he left. And then we were left there being like, "Well, now what?" So now it's been basically 12 weeks of non-weight bearing. My leg is turned into a toothpick, and then I start rehabilitation. But I started walking about 4 months later, and I started to rebuild. And all the things they told me I couldn't, I eventually did. And the last 6 physically was I was able to start long distance running 2 years ago, which was, they told me I would never be able to do that. And that was 17 years later. So I've regained every physical ability I had plus some, and movement to me now is one of the greatest things because I know what it feels like to not have that. And so I've been on Juice Plus ever since. It's something that I know what it did. I know my body was craving that nutrition, and I gave it what it needed. And I gave it those building blocks that it needed to rebuild my leg. So it's something I always share for anybody that's had any type of injury, no matter what, but is that biggest staple in my life. Now, I left out the big part. My brain injury was something that people didn't really know what to do with. At that time, if anybody's had concussions and stuff like that, this was early 2000s, people really didn't know what to do. It's getting better now, but they basically was like, "Well, you're not dead and you seem to be functioning, carry on." But there was no help. And so for years, I floated along with memory issues and mood instability and the inability to deal with this. And times where I should be finding myself as a human being, I was basically surviving and floating along, doing what I was expected of me. And of course, if anybody's been in those situations, that builds up, and ultimately you break. My brain injury created a ton of stress in my life. It was a constant awareness and battle to keep myself in check. not be frustrated when I can't remember where I am or what I did, or forgetting full days and forgetting the vast majority of my childhood. You forget who you are. You don't know who you are. And so what basically ended up is about 3 years ago, I had that break and everything fell apart. What looked great on the outside was not good on the inside. And I completely crumbled. I didn't know who I was. I didn't have a purpose. I didn't have anything like that. If anybody's ever been there and you plummet and your mind goes and you start hating who you are, you don't really have a lot of love for anything. So passion was gone in my life. I had to try to figure this out. And just as I start figuring it out, you get plummeted again. You think you're at rock bottom and you fall even further. And so I had a time in my life where day-to-day struggles just to try to keep myself together, motivated to go and do the things I needed to do. And on good days, you're able to do the things you knew were important: getting enough sleep, enough water, eating good, juice, moving, building yourself mentally and spiritually. Those are good days. But on most days, you're left with very little energy and motivation to do anything. But the one thing I had during that entire time was my Juice Plus. It was the true consistency that I had, and especially when it came down to the omegas. The omegas were something that I was offered, and I know a few other people here were, as a trial when Juice Plus came out with it. Juice Plus gave me a year's worth because they knew my background in brain injury, and I requested it from the late Dr. Du Bois. And he ended up giving it to me, and I had a year's worth of omegas. And immediately you could see, I could feel my brain sharpening. I could feel those things that I didn't know about. Like, as a doctor, we're not trained. And even as a chiropractor with mandatory nutrition training, we don't understand fat metabolism in the body. So when this entered my body and I was able to get more of it, my mind started to sharpen. I know fat is a precursor to a lot of my hormones, a lot of the neurotransmitters that are in my brain and all over my body. And it started changing who I was. And I know for a fact that if I didn't have that consistency of nutrition during that time to just keep me enough level and afloat, this would have been a different story. So I have absolute faith in what Juice Plus has to offer, especially when it comes down to just the basics of the fruits and vegetables, but all the way through to the omegas. Because when I needed it the most, it was a simple thing that I could do when I felt that I could do nothing.
Well, sorry.
So yeah, my feelings of Juice Plus and what it's done for me is something I'll be on my and why I offer
Clean it up, please.
everybody in my practice. Yeah, that's my story, guys.
Sorry about that. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for sharing that. So the omegas really helped with your memory and everything. When did you start noticing it? Like, was it within a few weeks or a few months, or was there like a time frame?
For me, fat metabolism is slow, very slow. So 3 weeks was one of those things where I think I started noticing, but it was actually the 3-month marker, which is, well, why Juice Plus offers things in 3 and 4 or in 4 months, right? 3 months is when I started to notice that I wasn't having as many memory lapses. My mind was sharper and it started to clear out. I started to have those moments. I call them like golden moments. I don't know if anybody has them, but like for me, like post exercise, the time like the first hour after that, I can look around and suddenly the problems don't seem so bad. You're more leveled out. You're more mellow. I started having those moments a lot more, little moments of just clarity and calm. And then that's at that 3 or 4 months. And I started kind of being like, oh, and then I started noticing my sleep was more efficient. That was the other really big one. And those two things together kind of locked me into the omegas. And the omegas, like, it's always funny when things come out. Like, one thing used to be your favorite, and then like this next thing is your favorite, and then the next thing is your favorite. That's kind of how this went. Like, it just, the omegas is something I locked into. And the more research I do, I work with a company that deals with spinal cord injury rehabilitation. That's all they do. And omegas and fat health for them are like the staple to what they do. Vitamin D's and omegas are the first thing they throw people on. So it's truly absolutely incredible. And of course, with that level of confidence, it launches me into why I promote it, like why this became a business. It started off as just something, be like, well, it makes sense, falls within my ethics as a chiropractor. We believe in natural. We don't believe in synthetic. We don't believe in any of that stuff, as needed, of course. So it started off as that, but then it became a really quick passion because you realize like how many people are going through this stuff and how much like just a little thing can change everybody. So I started promoting, I started having people come to me, I started doing whatever. And soon enough, I became an NMD. And now I have a benefit package that I don't get as a private business owner. I have consistent income during a pandemic. I have all these things that are just absolutely beautiful. I get to do stuff like this. It's just a win-win. So I couldn't be happier.
Wow. My goodness. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, for me, I noticed because I never took omegas before. And after having my first two kids, my memory, they talk about, oh yeah, you've got mama brain. Like it literally went out the window. I had sticky notes all over the place. I couldn't remember what I did that morning. It was really bad. Then they came out with the omegas, and it was about, for me, it was about 4 months. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know if it's working for me. So I stopped taking it. And then that's when I realized like I was starting to get a little foggy and things weren't as sharp anymore. I'm like, wow, this is really working. So then, yeah, so now I take it, my kids take it, they have great sleeps. My daughter, when she first started taking the product, her hair just really started growing. Everyone's like, what do you do for Chloe's hair? I'm like, honestly, ever since I got her on these omegas, it just grew. So, and especially for kids too, those omegas are so important. Like between the ages of what, up to 5, I think it was, I heard that that's when they really need it the most, the omegas. So
How did your little one take it? Did you get her to swallow? Did you like crack it open? How did she?
they chew it. They chew it. They love it. But I did actually teach Chloe and Reese. So my daughter is 6 and Reese is 4. They actually swallow their capsules, all of them. Yeah. So they don't really take the chewables anymore, but this is my trick. I told them just to put a little bit of water in their mouth, put 1 pill in there, and think about swallowing mashed potatoes. So then Reese is like, okay. And he swallowed it. He's like, that was really easy. And then Chloe tried it. Now they swallow all 3 together at once. So it's impressive. But yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, tell them to think of food as you're swallowing it. It really works.
Yeah, like anybody else has ever had an omega and they hear like the kids eating it and they're like, don't they choke on like the fish? I'm like, ha ha ha. But yeah, they're like a greasy orange kind of thing, right? Like both kids just like chew it like it's candy. It's ridiculous. But
yeah, no, they're delicious. Taste like, yep, they're really, really good. So yeah, and I love that they're plant-based too. You're not getting that fishy taste, right? So a little burp, fishy, yeah.
Yep.
So does anyone else have any questions for Brett? Anyone? No? Well, Brett, I want to thank you again so much for sharing your story. I cannot wait to share this with all my friends. I actually really didn't hear your story before. I heard it was amazing, and I thought of you, and I was like, you know what? I really want to hear his story. I just really want to get him on one of these calls, and I was just blown away by it. So I just want to thank you again for sharing this with all of us. And yeah, okay, I'm just gonna stop recording here.